Paul Strohmenger. I'm a CPA and a CFO, and my business is I'm a CFO for hire. So companies rent me on an as-needed basis. They need the skill set, but they can't afford me on a full-time basis.
Sure.
So I get called in to help straighten out companies. Either they're in maybe early stage, maybe they're in fast growth, maybe they're in turnarounds. And so perhaps they don't have the resources yet to bring somebody in with my skill and my knowledge on a full-time basis, and they can just rent me on a part-time basis. So I get to represent them, help them get their business straightened out, represent them to their creditors, to their bankers, to their shareholders.
Sure. What type of businesses, what's your range as far as size?
So size, anything from a startup, let's say, to companies probably doing 50 million. I've done as much as 250 million, but economically, people either have that resource perhaps full-time already. So it's generally in that, let's say more strategically in that $10 to $50 million range in terms of revenue size.
Excellent. And so as a CFO, you certainly come into contact with human resources and the general operations of a company.
In my role as CFO, I have to look at everything inside the company. What are we doing well? What are we not doing well? Where do we need help? And I have to have a network of people that I can say, okay, listen, here's an area, Tom, we need some help in. I think from an HR perspective, we really need to look at this, look at another solution from what we're doing now. So I see in the entire company.
Sure. And in your experience, you've come into contact with professional employer organizations.
I have. I've worked with clients that have PEOs, ones that don't have PEOs, and perhaps should have had a PEO.
And what would you feel is a good niche for a PEO to come into contact? What size company? What type of management team?
I would say their sweet spot is probably in that 10 to maybe 125 employees, particularly if they're doing business multi-state,
right,
where you've got compliance concerns. So you have the simple things to take care of, like just payroll processing and all those compliance filing issues that you have, and just managing payroll. But more importantly, then it's HR. How are you managing your business? How are you managing your employees? What are you doing to motivate, to retain, to attract? So you find that over time, the same way that I'm brought in, you can outsource a lot of what you do so that you can focus on your core business.
Right.
So let's get somebody in here that knows the business, that this is their expertise. Let's rent that, or let's pay for that expertise so I can focus on my business.
In your experience working with PEOs, you've kind of explained some of the pros and some of the benefits that a company can realize. What would you say are some of the difficulties for somebody in your position when working or engaging or shopping a PEO?
Well, there's certainly a lack of knowledge about the competitors out there. What do each of them bring individually to the table that's going to be most advantageous to my client? How do I differentiate between the value propositions of each of these companies? That's challenging.
Right.
That's why you look to somebody like your company. Say, help me through this.
Right.
Help me figure out who these guys are, and which ones make more sense for us, which ones don't.
So you've worked with PEO Spectrum in the past?
I have, and I certainly have to say that it's been a great resource for my clients and for me. So this is something where I can say to my client, here's the guy you got to bring in. Here's the company you have to bring in. And I know that's always going to be a trusted referral. It's always going to work.
Let's say we have a 50-person company in New York City, and they've heard about PEOs, but they've never really looked deep into one. How many companies would you recommend a 50-person company to shop and to consider before making a final decision? I'd
say usually any referral you want to give, I'd say just a rule of thumb would be 3.
Right.
3 referrals.
Got
so
it.
You certainly have not too many you have to weed through and figure out, okay, what do each of these guys do, and not a small, not 1 or 2 where you're just maybe not getting the most competitive proposals.
Would you say it's a fair statement to say that all PEOs are created equally?
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not.
What are some of the major differentiation points you've seen when working with various PEOs, or at least considering their proposals?
Well, you think, you've got the commodity part of their business, and then you've got the value-added part. From the commodity part of the business would be something as simple as payroll processing. Okay? Yeah. You're not going to screw that up.
Right.
That's got to be simple. Just price it for me well.
Right.
Then, more importantly, is I want to run my business. I want to run it well. I want to run it efficiently. I don't have the resources to devote what I need to do to attract, retain people.
Right.
And to make sure I'm in compliance with everything that I need to worry about out there.
What would you say the biggest advantages of working with PEO Spectrum were?
That's easy. I talk to these PEOs, I have no idea really what the true value is of these guys. PEO Spectrum has been there with each of these companies. They know what they do well, they know what they don't do well. They know what's going to fit in this particular client circumstances, because you always want it to be specific. You always want a specific solution here.
Right.
Okay? Are these guys the right ones? Are they not the right ones? You know, help me filter that information. And that's what PEO Spectrum does so well.
Right.
PEO Spectrum has worked with all these guys. Okay, so they can help make the best judgment, the best choice in bringing in that solution, the right solution.
Do you have any commentary? We've spoken to a lot of people in your position, a lot of decision makers who work with PEOs, and you know, one of their biggest challenges is, you know, once you've got all of their proposals and they've made their presentations, now, you know, how do we make sense of what they're truly going to cost? Do you have any commentary on you know, how that can affect the decision-making process?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in any decision process, you've got quantitative and qualitative issues to wade through. With the PEOs, you would think that the quantitative side of that discussion would be fairly simple, but it's not.
Right.
Because not all of these guys are straight up in terms of what you're actually going to have to pay.
Right.
Okay? So what I found most helpful to me was to turn the proposal over to PEO Spectrum, let them run the numbers, because they can sort through the weeds.
Right.
And tell me exactly what the deal is with these guys.
Right.
And then qualitatively, obviously, that's one of the great resources that PEO Spectrum has, is say, we know these guys. This is what they do well. This is not what they don't do well.
Right.
This is what's going to work for your company, your client, this size, these needs. This is going to be the better choice.
Right.
Here are the numbers.
Do you consider working with a company like PEO Spectrum to be an educational process? Do you learn something while you work with them that you can apply to future engagements with clients?
Absolutely. PEOs have really not gained a lot of traction. They seem to be accelerating, I think, more recently. But historically, there has not been a lot of information out there about PEOs, and not a lot of companies have adopted them. Certainly not a lot of clients I've worked with. It seems like over the past couple of years, I've seen more and more of this. And I see more and more the value of the PEO. And I think after having worked with PEO Spectrum, I've been able to at least learn, as you've gone through the process, as you would expect with anything you do, where you're engaged in something new, you walk away with more knowledge, and you're able to use that knowledge going forward to help other clients.